I'm Alan Thompson. I'm a member of NOSAS, North of Scotland Archaeological Society, and I, and indeed NOSAS, have been involved with scrap since the very beginning. And as a community group, what we've mainly been doing, of course, is recording. So let's just revisit that very briefly. Here we are. In the early days, top left there at Drummoor, we were very much in groups because we went to places where there were lots of panels known. And we were really sort of learning about it and training ourselves and exploring in a sort of initial way as one does. But as the project progressed, we moved to smaller groups. And the bottom left, you can see a picture, not groups of one in general, but there's Maya. And I put her in because she came and helped us, and we very much appreciated that. But of course, when we say recording rock art, that's only really a very small part of the job, because the first thing you have to do in simple terms is to find the things. And in many cases, we didn't find them. In many cases, we found them and they weren't cut mark rocks, they were something else. But a few, such as the one shown on the right there at Ardross, was actually very easy indeed to find. That's unusual. So that's what we've been doing, recording. And the output of our work, of course, is, as you can see here, lots of spots on the map. These are the very many records now in the scrap database, which we've done. And they're records of actual, or what I might call very likely panels recorded, and obviously excludes those that we haven't yet visited, which are a few, not found, which are quite a lot, or natural features, which are quite a lot as well. So this is a selected out group. And you can see the area is huge. It covers Highland region, Moray, and a little bit of Aberdeenshire. And the great majority of the panels are actually in the inner Moray Firth here. And the sort of distribution is even denser than it looks here, because many of these are groups of panels. So there are a large number of panels in that area. So now any one of us, any one of you, can access the records from the database. You can do your own analysis of the size, location, rock type, motifs, whatever you want. And you can do it, of course, across the whole of Scotland and make such comparisons as you like to do. And I've had a play with that. But actually, for the purposes of the talk today, this short talk, I thought rather than do a subset for Highland, I would take a different approach, sort of personal one. And the difference, I guess, that I'm wanting to make is that I've actually visited and in many cases recorded these panels. And I finish up really with a wealth of impressions, which, you know, despite our best endeavors and no doubt correct recording, don't sort of really get into the record anywhere. So I thought I'd use this short talk to try and share some of them with you. And I'd like to emphasize it's very much a personal view. So what we're going to do is to go out and record one or two panels in the sort of normal way, and then I'll try and come to some conclusions from that, which of course with rock art is always very difficult. So our first panel is at Ardross. It's just inland from Elness and Invergordon in our area. So we start in the usual way. We look up on scrap. Scrap says that there is a Canmore record. The Canmore record is there in the inset on the slide. And what does it say? Well, that grid reference is a prostrate slab, 0.7 meters square, bearing at least 25 cut marks and so on. And it notes that it was visited in 1970. But it's quite a promising one, because when we look on the map and the Ordnance Survey, we can see it's actually marked here. That's good. And looking around, we can see that there are hut circles, cairns and so on. So it sounds like a decent area. And also there's a little bilac or pass and so on behind us here. Hopefully as well that trees have not, since the map was produced, been planted over it. So it should be quite a straightforward visit to make. So off we go. And when we get there, we find it a field with closely cut grass, and with a little bit of looking around, are able to find and reveal the panel, which you can see here in the foreground. Now, that's, to me, you know, immediately when you sort of see something like this, you get to somewhere like this, you think, well, what really strikes you about it? Well, of course, let's talk about the negatives and the positives. The negative, of course, is, as is obvious, that clearly farm machinery runs across this sandstone panel. Pleased to say it doesn't look obviously damaged. That can hardly be a good thing. Looking at the aspect, of course, we're looking really to the east-southeast down the hill. And looking to the real distance there, what we can see is that this is where the Cromarty Firth goes out into the Moray Firth. So you have the South Souter and Cromarty here, the North Souter and Nig here, and the Moray coastline very, very faint in the far distance. Remember, of course, the little pass and so on is behind us. So this is an absolutely brilliant location, an open aspect, and obviously sets the thing off to maximum effect. But let's then have a look at the panel itself. And these obviously are from our photogrammetry that was done. Bear in mind, as I'm talking through here, I'm here to record it. It's on a fine and medium sandstone, which is unusual because most of the panels in our area are on schist. But look at the design. And I'm going to say design, I don't know whether that's a dangerous word, because it doesn't really look like a random collection of cups of different sizes with a few grooves drawn in as well. Motifs, it seems to me, have been chosen and placed to create a pleasing, sort of almost artistic effect. But I'm there to record, so I record the size, I record the number of cups, I record the dimensions, I record all the different things that we do, and then I pack up, I put the grass back over the pedal and I walk back down the hill. And what's in my mind when I go down the hill? Well, I'm not thinking, great, there were 25 cups. I think, what a fine panel in a brilliant location. So let's have a look at another example a little way south of here, just north of Dingwall. And this is at a place called Flecklady. And this one is not on Canmore, but it is on the HER, local Highland, local HER. And again, if we look at the bottom in the inset, is what it says on the HER. And it says, well, actually, it's been on the HER, just to remark, for about 12 to 15 years, and it's not yet on Canmore. It does take a long time for them to get through. And John Wombell has visited this stone, it says, following basically a tip-off, and reports it to be a very fine example in a most striking position. He goes on to describe the thing a little bit and the need to remove turf and so on. So this looks like a good one because I know John well. John ran the Rothschild Rock Art project before Scrap, and he's visited and discovered many panels in the area. So, you know, he's been a sort of mentor to me for this project. And if he says it's a very fine example, I'm pretty confident it's going to be worth a visit. So let's have a look at the panel. Well, this is what it looks like when we get there. And again, it's a small panel here, but look at the aspect here. Here is the Cromarty Firth running across. Cromarty is off to the left, Dingwall down off to the right, the Black Isle beyond on the other side. There's this sort of lump here called Knockravok, and a little, well, I would call Secret Valley almost in the background here. As you can see, there's a good track. It's not exactly inaccessible, but it isn't the sort of place that anybody much would go unless they were specifically looking for something like this. So let's have a look at the panel itself. And again, I've done this one. This is from the photogrammetry. It's a small panel, 1.3 meters across. But in this case, I would say the style of the panel immediately grabs my attention. The cups are shallow and flat bottomed, and some of them almost overlap. You can see here, almost overlap there. And the rings, such as they are not really separate for the cups. They're more like they step down into the cup. You can see down here, it steps down into the cup as well. And in the top part of this image, I think it has a leaf or sort of paw print-like character. Well, a great panel. How many cups are there? Well, I record them, count them for the record. But again, when I go away from there, it won't be the first thing I recall about this panel. So we look there at two really quite striking panels, and quite near to the one at Flecklady, in fact, just down the hill from there, two other panels that are quite different. So you can see the one we're looking at is in the red one here, and there are these two just down the hill from there. And I want to look at those two because they are quite different, and I think that's instructive to look at them. So here I have the three sort of set together, the one I've just been looking at and the other two. And the one on the left there, bottom left, Knockravok, is a big panel. I mean, that's 2.8 meters across. It's on schist. It's got lots of cups. Some of them are conjoined in complicated sorts of ways, as we can see here. And there are certain larger cups as well. And down here, not easily visible unless you've got a very good screen, is that there is a single cup with a single ring around it, almost going down into the ground there. And over at Woodlands Farm, the other one, that's 1.6 meters, not so big in dimension, but it actually is a big panel. It's the sort that stands out in the field, and the sheep sort of rub around it and so on. It's rather eroded, lots of cups, but some with faint rings and other motifs. So these two, I'd like to suggest, and I've having gone around, spent so much time looking at these things, are typical of really another group of panels, which tend to be large with lots of cups, no particular pattern or layout, but an overall character rather perhaps than design. And this has led my thinking in my own sort of rather personal way to think that when I go to see the panels, I see them in different sort of groups or categories. So I'm going to share that with you. And here are my categories. And I have to emphasize the word subjective because, it is actually quite subjective. The first two we looked at, that what I've called type 1 design, are ones where I think it was, might have been done by one person. Could it have been done at one sitting? It has a complete sort of coherent design feel to it. The second ones are big ones, often upstanding in the landscape. They generally have a lot of cups, sometimes one very big cup, sometimes a single cup and a ring, and often a variety of grooves and so on. Because when you go beyond that, the great mass of the panels, what I originally sought to do was to split these up into further groups, like the ones with a small group of cups at the top or along the edge of an outcrop or a row of larger cups. And you can do that, but for these purposes, I've put them all together here. And there are a lot of those, and we certainly won't have time to look at them, but they are I'll say it negatively, the run-of-the-mill ones, the ones that we're pleased to see and add up and make up the numbers. And of course, the type 4 are the ones where there's no discernible pattern or are just odd cups, which of course don't in a sense have a pattern with them. There are very few actually which are what I would call totally random, but I think that's partly because of the way the mind works, that we easily see patterns in things, and therefore the majority of the smaller panels tend to finish up in group 3. And you'll see at the bottom there, I say plus oddities. Now, why have I said that? Well, whenever you invent any sort of categorization, however scientific or otherwise, there are always ones that don't really fit. And the ones that don't fit are ones that are interesting to have a look at, because that, in a sense, sort of challenges your categorization and makes you maybe learn something from it. So what I'm going to do is have a little look at a few oddities, then we'll go back and compare a set of type 2 and type 1 and come to some sort of hopefully conclusion. So here we've got the oddities, and I have said quite clearly there, oddities in our area. And let me explain why I say that, because if you look at the panel top center, Easter Backlands of Rosal 2, this panel has got on it multiple concentric rings around a cup, multiple concentric rings around a cup, and you can see at least 4 examples. I think there are others on this panel. Lovely panel, sandstone flat, set down in the ground and so on. Now, if I were at Kilmartin, or indeed in practically anywhere else in Scotland, and I saw a panel with cups with multiple rings around it, I would not be surprised. But this is basically, in realistic terms, it's really the only one in our area. And I think that's really rather remarkable. And it is in Moray, which is in the far east of our area. And it's quite close, within a sort of longish walk distance, of Camus's Stone on the right there. And Camus's Stone is one where there are these very faint spirals. Now, if you visit, the stone is it's a standing stone, it's extremely eroded. You certainly don't see the spirals when you're there, but as you can see with what I might call extreme photogrammetry, they can be picked out. So there we've got those two at the, pretty much the far east of our area, which are pretty unusual ones and don't really sort of fit with the rest. Now, I'm not going to go around the whole set here because we haven't got time. There are just a few other oddities there that you can glance at because I need really to press on for time reasons and go on to my category 2. And my category 2, as I've said, are these big ones, the ones that have a presence in the landscape, the ones that and these spread out over the whole of our area. And I've deliberately included Duncraigach 1, which is in the far north near to Loch Neva, and Corskelly is in Moray, and the other 5 here, 3 of which we've already glanced at, are actually in that central Inner Moray Firth area. They tend to be on schist, they tend to be big, they tend to be upstanding in the landscape. They're the ones that are picked out in the field by the animals going around them and so on. And there are quite a number of these. I think they're a characteristic group. And there is one, however, of this group, which is much bigger than all the others. So I've given it a slide on its own, and that's the one at the Fairy Stone, it's called, at the Botax, which is at the head of Strath Peffer. Now, it's 4.6 meters long, so it's a big panel. It overlooks the area, it overlooks the valley, if you like, of Strathpeffer. Great to show you a photo of that and how it does, but it's covered by an overgrown hedge and trees. So I thought maybe we could focus on the this 3D model snapshot to show you some of its features. And as you can see, typically of our bigger panels, what has it got? Well, lots of simple cups, a few larger ones, one or two other motifs, and a single cup with a ring. Odd, there it is on the there. Here it is on the 3D image. And you can see on the 3D image, and I've chosen it deliberately, this sort of angle of view, that you can see these grooves which run down here. These are certainly not geological. These are grooves which have been made on the rock and really are quite a distinctive feature of this sort of a panel. Now again, I need to press on. I'm here to record. So one of the things I've got to do is to count the cups. How many does it have? Well, I'm a pretty conservative recorder and I got 161 simple cups plus other motifs. I mean, other people have been and swear that there's over 250. So maybe the counting of the cups is not such a factual matter as one might initially think. Let's go back then to type 1. And here we've got 6. Now the two on the left, obviously the ones we looked at Ardross and at Flecklady. And there are several others in the area which I think do have a sort of look as if they were made in one, sort of in one go by one person with a design in mind, however you like to express it. So the Clava cairns, where there are 3 cairns, the famous cairns, lots of people visit them, and there is this panel which is in the curb of the northeast cairn. And what might we say about this one? Well, it's well preserved. I understand from reading about it that it was face down for many years, which I think has perhaps helped it. It's got very deep cups. There's almost a ring around the thing at the bottom right of the ring around one of the cups, a nearly complete ring. And it's got these grooves. And the grooves, as you can see the tool marks in the grooves. They're quite fussy and jaggy almost. And we could compare that with the Ardross one on the left here, where here the cups are broad and shallow and the rings are smooth and soft in a sense. And so we do have a very strong contrast between these rocks, both of which will be described as having so many cups and a certain number of grooves. They are completely different. And when we look at style, I have to bring in the Categorizing one. Now, Categorizing is another far north one. It's above Strathkildonan near to Helmsdale. And this one is interesting because the motifs are very precisely incised, almost look like they were made by a machine. It's really, really neat, this one. Flat-bottomed cups, beautifully cut rings, almost complete rings there, and a nice little scatter of motifs together. I have to say, when I first saw this one, I thought maybe it's a fake. Maybe it's one that's been made later by somebody with superior technology. I think not on reflection. It's in a very odd location up on the moors. Hard to imagine why anyone would go up there and fake a stone and put it there, but you never know. Bran is a standing stone in the area. It's broken. There used to be more of the rock here. You can see it's a very clearly broken edge. So it's a standing stone. It's clearly been moved. It stands by a wall, and there are some motifs on the back, nothing like the comprehensive ones on the front. And again, I like this one because it does have that sort of feeling, a feeling of motion to it, but also a feeling of coherence of design. Somebody, I believe, thought about it. It didn't just happen by accident by people going along and pecking out a few motifs and so on. And finally, and this is the last on the panel here, but certainly by no means the least. And bear in mind that the first 5 of these, the other 5 are all photogrammetric images. This one for Loch and Harkle is a natural light picture. This one is unusual in a number of respects. The rock is a garnet mica schist, and garnets, of course, are very hard. And so that makes for a very knobbly and difficult surface. And whoever carved this rock out with these very neat motifs on it, certainly I think they had a challenging job to do. And, you know, on the face of it, you might say, well, why would they do that? But I guess the reason is the stunning location, which is here. And this is where the panel is, right in the far north of Scotland. And so that's obviously the picture that I showed you at the very beginning. Now, I've used my sort of categorization as an excuse to show you some of the panels in a very personal sort of way. And as I come towards the end of my time, I'd like to just reflect on one or two questions, which are things that have gone through my mind as I've been going around doing the recording and looking at these panels and thinking about them. And they're fairly simple questions, although the answers are perhaps less so. So I've really, in a way, been very privileged to be able to go and find and clean and record so many panels. But, what about other people? Do we want other people to go and look at the panels? And it's not such a silly question, really. I mean, you can say many of them, like this one in the background, is very remote. Well, that shouldn't be a problem to many people. The landowners that I've met in general have been very nice, very cooperative and so on. Although several have said, well, if you put this thing on the record, are lots of people going to come and see it? And they may be a little bit sort of cautious about that, which is understandable. And of course, I've been along with the having been trained and with the ability to clean and photogrammetrically record the things. Other people going along may say, well, I'd like to look at it properly. I'd like to clean it as well. And potentially the panels could be damaged. So question 1, no easy answer. Question 2, what will happen to the panels which are clearly at risk? Well, quite a lot are in our area, and I showed you the one at Ardross right at the beginning, where the farm machinery goes over it. But, what are you going to do about that? Fence it in? Well, that would really... Sorry?
Apologies for interrupting. There's only 2 minutes left.
Okay, I will be very shortly finished.
Thank you.
And that one is one which, if we moved it, no, not good news. If we fenced it in, not good news. In a way, the beauty of it is that you can see it in the open field where it is. So a difficult question there. I'm coming to a conclusion. Well, the answers to the first two, I think, are the thing that we're already doing to get the photogrammetry, get the pictures, and do that so that people can actually look at the things virtually, at least, and see them well, a lot better than was ever possible in the past. And I think that makes our work worthwhile. And as a local group, and I hasten to use the word local group, we really want to be able to have these things accessible through our local HER. We really do want that. And the final question, what next for those of us who have been doing the recording? Well, I actually don't know the answer to that one, so I think I shall stop there. Back to you, Joanna. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alan. That was really, really interesting. I will ask you just the one question from Katka, and she's asking, were the motifs carved on the stone first and afterwards planted into the ground, or were they rather created on stones already in place?
Well, I think obviously I don't know because I wasn't there, but on the other hand, some of them are certainly stones of such a large size that clearly they must have been recorded, done on site there. But equally well, standing stones and the curbstone on the Clava cairns and so on, I imagine were carved and then moved and put into position. I don't know. I think it would have been a lot easier to do that. If you think about the one with the spiral on, I think carving those would have been quite tough. And I imagine that one was carved horizontally, possibly for other reasons, and then ultimately became a standing stone. I genuinely don't know, but clearly it could be either in different circumstances.
Yeah, so there could have been some movement of the stones around. Yeah. Well, Ellen, thank you very much one more time. And thank you for all your hard work throughout all these years. The NOSAS team has done a wonderful, wonderful job. And there's a huge contribution for the Highland in terms of the rock art recording. So thank you again.